Welcome in to the latest and greatest installment of the Hoops Boys podcast. I co-host with the most host, James the Jet. I, of course, am America's favorite bitch-ass white boy, CProc, and our guest expert analysts, as always, Greggers and The Shaddillac. Gentlemen, holidays are past. A new year is upon us.
Happy New Year.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good, just living life like usual. How about you?
Hooping it up. Maybe figuratively, not literally. Of course, with the new year turning, that means we just turned the page on a very special time of year on the NBA calendar. We went over and previewed it in the last episode. Now we get to recap what actually happened. The typical unofficial start to the season, that is the Christmas Day slate. And we got some gems, so we'll break them down. And the first one I want to go over is probably, I think, the best one of the day, and that was the Bucks and Celtics, which at the time were both battling for Eastern supremacy. There's been a little bit of a change in the standings since, but I was watching that game, and I kept kind of seeing the Bucks want to take the game. They want to take the game, and they just didn't have enough to they would pull a little ahead, they would fall a little back. They would pull a little ahead, they fall a little back. And the Celtics, I think, just with how hot they've been, how healthy they are, they were able to just maintain it. And Giannis and in the couple weeks since, as this has just been continually proven, Giannis is just really doesn't have his whole squad there, and the Chris Middleton injury is really causing a significant damper on their season right now. So, I mean, were you guys impressed, surprised, disappointed by that game? What were your thoughts?
Go
ahead.
No, I'm just genuinely surprised. Not particularly by the game, more so just by how the Celtics have been playing. I really thought they'd kind of take a dip this season. Not a huge dip, but I didn't think they would be like the best team in the NBA just because all their off-season noise. They seem to not miss a beat, and they seem to almost have gotten better. And I think they do kind of have the Bucks number, as they've beaten them regular season, and then they've beaten them last year, in the playoffs, even though it went 7. So, you got Jason Tatum, who might be the front runner for MVP right now, playing good. Jaylen Brown, he looks like certainly like a superstar. And I guess they got, I don't know if it's the players or the coach, but, they're looking like a legit team. And the way they just seem to own the Bucks is just kind of baffling, because the Bucks do have, the best player in the world, in my opinion. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
For me, I think this was kind of status quo for the Celtics. And I wouldn't read too much into it from Milwaukee. As you said, Middleton's out. It's on the road. Celtics, in my opinion, they had a rough stretch a couple weeks back. They've been the most consistent team in the league to this point. And just a quick glance at that game, I remember them hit threes left and right, and I checked. They went 19 of 39 from three. It's almost 50%. So, I mean, right off the bat, you got 57 points from three, scattered over. I think there were 8 different people who hit threes. And that just shows their depth. That's a huge advantage they have. They can withstand injuries better than other teams because of that depth. So I think from Milwaukee, we're not seeing their finished product. For Boston, that's kind of what they are. They're deep and they're really good right now.
I agree with Greg. With Chris Middleton being out, it's a one-man show with Giannis, and the Celtics being the best team in the NBA. It was a pretty tough out for the Bucks to overcome. But moving right along to another Christmas game, the Denver Nuggets versus the Suns. This went to OT. Joker had a monster triple-double, 41 points, 15 rebounds, 15 assists. He really showed out to carry his team to the win. Devin Booker tried to give it a go this game, but he only lasted about 4 minutes before being pulled because of that groin injury. Got aggravated. So, guys, how do we feel about this game and Joker with the big triple-double?
A lot of guys had big games in this one. Gordon had a big double-double. Joker was huge. And Jamal Murray had a big game too. So I mean, if this was the Denver game that the Nuggets are supposed to be, it was a good showing on one of the biggest stages of the year, of the NBA calendar, I should say, and and Phoenix has since had a lot of injury concerns, but if there was any kind of performance for Denver to show out and say, hey, maybe like we're flipping the script on Western dominance, as the Suns have kind of held a lot of that in the last couple of years. That Denver certainly put them on notice, and I think that's what they needed to do.
The Suns played really well that game too. They had like 6 players in double figures.
Shamet, didn't Greg like that guy coming out of school?
Yeah, I think he had 30 that game.
Yeah. Off the
Which
bench.
I kind of think that's, I don't like to read too much into an individual game, but I do wonder, if you want to symbolically, like that could be somewhat of a changing the guard out west. And the reason why it happened, Jokic again he's a monster. I mean, he dominates that game in particular. 41, 15, and 15. That's ludicrous. I mean, I don't care who's playing for the other squad. He does it easily. But, you just brought up Jamal Murray scoring 26. Murray seems to be getting back into form now. And, you had Porter if he stays healthy. And I think even who goes under the radar, Aaron Gordon, is in a much different role with Denver. He was languishing with those Orlando teams. And I think had a role not suited for him. He's not the 1A scorer. He never was going to be. So, I mean, you have him as a 3-4 option. That team's starting to really come together. And I think for Phoenix, again, it's one game that they're not, but they've been struggling. I think age injuries are, at least on their stars, Chris Paul in particular, injuries are a concern. So I think Denver's somewhat, marking their territory, if you want to call that, on Christmas. They kind of said that they're going to be a factor come playoff time.
I felt like it was a good game for Denver, but I feel like that the Suns showed that they could have a little chance, as being a contender without CP3 and Booker, because you had guys step up like Shamet and Lee, and DeAndre Ayton. He kind of showed that he can be an alpha male and get you double, pretty easy against good competition. So it might not be as grim as many people say with the Suns as far as injuries and everything. Do I think they can win the championship, with all these injuries and everything? No, but I don't think they're going to be a team, that could fall at the playoffs. Because they do have, like I said, these people like Shamet and Lee, and then they have, Ayton, if he plays, up to par, he's a walking double-double when he wants to be. It seems like, and they're a good 3-and-D type of team. So anytime you have good shooting, good defense, you're always going to be at least in the hunt. But of course, the Nuggets. That's kind of probably my pick to come out the West right now. Just with the depth that they have, probably like 3 or 4, probably a good 4 guys who could easily get you 20 a night, and you have Jokic, who may be the best, most versatile offensive player in the league. Probably won't win MVP again just because of the standard. He can't win 3 in a row. I don't think anybody's done that in a long, long time. But the Nuggets, they look pretty good. But I think it's more for the Suns, because the Suns, without their top players, are still looking like a decent team.
is Denver's defense up to the eventual task of having to go against the same equal team successive games in a playoff series?
I mean, I think there's really no team who could match them offensively, so I don't think that matters too much. I mean, I think a team that maybe they would have to shut down, but it's not as good as they were offensively, would be like the Golden State Warriors. But I feel like they're over the hump by far. So I think it's kind of people have to match up with them versus vice versa.
Yeah, I don't think their defense is egregious enough. I think they have to be decent, not great. And what's become clear, I think, at this point, there's no real. I don't remember a year in recent memory that there's no real clear-cut favorite out West. Like, you can make a case for a number of teams. So, kind of that point, I mean, Denver has to be decent and proficient on the defensive end. They don't have to be all world, but they can't be a sieve either. Their offense will bring them a long way.
Is that enough as long as they stay healthy? Is this like the early 2000s Kings or the mid 2000s Suns whenever they had the Nash teams running?
No, because I think with those teams those teams run into a juggernaut. I think the juggernaut right now in the West is over, so it's kind of a wide open race. And they did take the Warriors to a good series, but they just didn't have enough firepower with the injuries that they did have. So I think this, like you were kind of saying before, like this might be the change in the guard. This might be like the new kind of contender that gets to the finals, 2-3 times over the next 5 years.
Yeah. But again, to his point, I agree. I think the West is still wide open though. I mean, even Denver. How does Porter and Murray hold up later in the year? I mean, we hope for them. You just want to see good talent flourish. But I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee. Come playoff time, they're in great shape. You hope so, but to be determined.
One more follow-up and then I'll shut up, partner.
No, you're good.
We're doing a lot of forecasting. So is Phoenix going to have the chance to, before the playoffs start, is Phoenix going to have the chance to come back around? Obviously, they're probably going to play each other again regardless, but are they going to really have the chance to come back around and flip the script and have, obviously this was a close game. It wasn't a blow up any stretch. It went to overtime, but have the chance to kind of say, hey, Denver, slow your roll a little bit. We were still the top dogs here for the last couple of years. Obviously not to pay any disrespect to the Warriors' little resurgence last year back to.
Well, again, I don't see any reason. I mean, I'm with Chad either. I wouldn't pick the Suns personally, but I don't think there's any reason. Like, it's not a long shot that they get themselves back together. And if they go into the playoffs healthy, could they be a factor and possibly go back to the finals? I think it is possible. I mean, especially when you have a guy like Booker, who's A1. If he's healthy, Mikal Bridges has been excellent. They have depth. So it wouldn't be my pick right now, but I don't think they're dead in the water by any means. And there's no team running away with the West as is anyway. So it's what do they look like come April, in my opinion.
And they also have Jay Crowder just not wanting to play.
I think that hurt. I think that was one of those factors. I was thinking that earlier in that game. They're missing him. There's no doubt that you just watch them, and if you there's something missing from last year.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think Jay Crowder missing is actually a big piece. He was kind of a glue guy.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully they could get. I mean, if they're going to trade him, get something that'll help them out.
Yeah. They've missed him.
Sure. But let's keep it out west and talk about another Christmas game between the Lakers and the Mavericks. With the video game character himself, Luka Doncic, and Old Man River, LeBron James. This was a great game. The Mavericks started off slow, but then had a 51-point third quarter, which propelled them to the win in this game. Big games from Luka, of course, Tim Hardaway, and a very big game from LeBron James. He had 38 this game. Reaction, gents, how did we feel about the Lakers versus the Mavericks?
That third quarter made this game look a lot more out of hand than it would have otherwise been interpreted as in the first half.
Right.
I mean, Luka very much is a video game. He hasn't slowed down in the couple weeks since. It's like I think I said when we started off this season that maybe I was just a year ahead as far as calling the MVP for him, because he certainly looks like he wants that trophy now.
No, for sure.
No, I think this was a good game for the King. He's still showing that he could hang with the young boys, especially Luka. Believe he had almost 40 points that game. So I think, and even though everybody dumps on the Lakers, I think it's encouraging for them that if LeBron could still kind of show that he could carry a team to at least be a halfway decent. He may not be, the King back in his day where he could carry any team to 60 wins, but I think this shows that he can, possibly get them to the play-in game if Anthony Davis doesn't come back, or, Westbrook, isn't, in his prime anymore. But Luka, that guy is special. When it's all said and done, he might be a top 10, player, ever. Definitely probably a top 10 scorer. Just with this talent, that's something I don't think I've ever seen, especially with somebody who just, doesn't seem that very athletic at all. He just executes very well. I still think they need more around him to be a serious contender, because it does seem like everything has to go through him, and if it doesn't, they seem to be dead in the water. They either have to shoot lights out, or I don't know. They just seem to be too Luka dependent. But this game is definitely encouraging. I would say more for the Lakers. For the Mavericks, it's more expected. And that's what I think about that.
I thought, as far as the game myself, I thought to be expected. I didn't think the Lakers were going into Dallas beating them. The one thing I would say that caught my interest in that game, though, was I've been curious. Like, one of Dallas's big acquisitions was Christian Wood coming in. He'd been coming off the bench. He hadn't been playing too many minutes. And whether it's a fit thing or not, I just feel like Dallas isn't talented enough to not play him enough to give him so few minutes. So that game, again, looking at the box score here, he played 38 minutes, 30 points, 8 boards, 7 assists. The point is, for Dallas, who I think's the larger factor come playoff time, they're going to need Wood to play a big role like that. It can't be Luka every night. They'll throw double teams at him. And Wood has shown he's a solid player. So I think for Dallas, that you've seen an increase since then of his playing time and his how many valuable minutes he's playing. So I think for the Mavericks, they need more of that. They're going to need Wood to take on a much bigger role going forward if they want to compete come Western Conference playoffs time.
That was a little more tame than I thought you were going to be after Shad said people like to dump on the Lakers all the time.
I mean, but listen, that's Dallas is very good. The Lakers, as much as I've dumped on them, I've said for 2 years, I mean, there's not much talent around LeBron. So, I still, I didn't expect them to go into Dallas on Christmas Day and beat them. I did not.
Yeah, another big time Western matchup. And we talked a little bit about changing of the guards before with Denver and Phoenix. Maybe this was, final score didn't actually obviously result in such, but as far as forecasting, a lot of people maybe thought that this could have been a potential changing of the guards between the Warriors and Memphis. They played a heck of a first round series last year. First round, wasn't it?
I think it was second
round.
And Ja came to play as everyone expected. Didn't shoot that great from 3. And this game it had a similar flow to it as the Celtics game, where the Warriors were growing. Grizzlies kept tightening the lead. The Warriors would pull back in front a little bit more. The Warriors eventually closed it out. But I mean, like I thought the big storyline to what I felt like consistently throughout the game was Jordan Poole. And it just rings back to this Warriors team as they kind of sunset out eventually out of the Steph Curry era into whatever is for the future. Just continue to prove that Jordan Poole is probably the guy that's going to be the face of that franchise going forward. Is these two kind of teams that play this exciting brand of basketball, up and down, run a lot, shoot threes, super young cores? Will if the Grizzlies have anything to say about it, will they do they have any chance to sneak into that changing of the guard mindset? Maybe before Denver does. Like if Denver's not careful, it doesn't get their championship before alleged window closes or such. Can Memphis like circumvent them a little bit and get into that conversation?
Me personally, I think 100% they can. I think they're already arrived. You talk about depth. They're another team that goes 9-10 deep at times. That game in particular, Golden State shot well. I mean, bottom line, we know they can score. So to me, Memphis is a legitimate. Like it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Memphis made the NBA Finals this year. I mean, you obviously have a superstar. You have Jaren Jackson, whose back seems to be playing at a high level again. Desmond Bane, who's turned out to be one of the gems of the draft a few years ago. I think that Memphis is already there. I mean, they went against a hot shooting Warriors team who can light it up on a good night. And I don't take anything away from the Grizzlies. Just a good night for the Warriors, as far as I'm concerned.
James the Jet is John Morant's biggest fan.
Yeah, he's one of my faves.
Well, or rather his biggest fan when Greg doesn't want to be his biggest fan.
Wow.
But yeah, I think if you take a look at the record right now in the West, like that'll show you that the Grizzlies are right on the heels of the Nuggets. So they got to be careful.
I think the Grizzlies are good, but they're not great. I wouldn't put them, I would say, in the top two or three teams that would come out the West. But I certainly wouldn't be surprised, as Greg said, if they did come out the West. I just think it's so wide open, and I don't think they match up well, scoring wise with a lot of, the top teams. That's my only kind of complaint about them. They do have good depth, but it seemed like they have a lot of guys who do almost like old school, like do one or two things well, but they're not like too much like all around good players. And they're very job reliant. But I think I was impressed, with the Warriors. It does show that, if Steph Curry is not on his game or is out, that Jordan Poole can, go in there for a little bit and, light it up the scoreboard. But I don't think, the Warriors are anywhere what they used to be. I don't think they're going to do anything close to what they did last year. But this was kind of the game for them because all the talk on Twitter, off season about getting this game on Christmas Day. So I think this was kind of like the Warriors championship game for now.
Is that those role players that do one or two things really well, or maybe even just one thing really, like you dial it back long enough to, Bruce Bowen, who he could shoot some threes, but he was really just a defensive player, a great defensive player. Players like that, for those type of players that Memphis has, typically the team has their stud, and then they have another guy who's not quite stud, but is darn near close. And if the stud's ever off, can be the stud on any given night. Who's that second guy on Memphis right now?
I mean, I guess you would say Bane, but I don't think he's a real 2. I think he's probably a 3. That's what I think it kind of worries me. Even though they did well last year in the playoffs with Ja, it was a short period of time, and I think teams can expose that. I feel like can this team score 110, 120 points consistently, especially if Ja's off? I don't really think so. And I think that's what you kind of need, today. You need to score probably at least 110 points. You have to think about to win, probably more. And without Ja, you're taking away probably close to 30 points a game. I think Bane's probably good for about 20 or so, but the rest of the guys, it seems like those guys would be lucky to give you 10, 12 points. Guys like Steven Adams or Brooks, Triple J, Jones, all those people like that. I don't see them as people that can really, for a stretch, get you more than 10, 12 points a game. And they're going to need that, when it comes to these, bigger juggernaut teams.
I think for me, Jackson to me will be the whole key of what their ceiling is, because Bane really has turned into that good a shooter. I mean, he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the entire league, especially with Ja's creation ability. He's seeing open shots. He's going to continue to. I get Chad's point about your no bona fide, 2 score, 2 or 3, but that's where, again, Jaren Jackson is the key to me. I mean, if he's healthy, he completely changes that team. He's kind of the do-it-all. He can even hit a few shots from out 3. No, I don't want him jacking up 7 a game from there, but he really changes the whole complexion of that team. So for me, he's kind of he reminds me of, because we're talking about Golden State, he's a more offensively polished Draymond Green. That's how I see Jackson's game. So for me, if Jackson stays healthy and continues his game ascension, he's still a young kid himself. That I think he will, for this year, determine their ceiling. So I feel good with Bane knocking down shots left and right, but Jackson to me will be the one who, where his ceiling lies this year, I believe is where the Grizzlies' ceiling will lie.
Yeah, I agree. I think their bona fide 2 is up to Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks to make that determination. Which one of them is going to step up to be the person to help Ja win these games? Bane's there, he's solid, but I agree he's like a third option. You need another goer to go with Ja, and it has to be Jaren or Dylan, in my opinion.
Oh, there was another game. Can we talk about it?
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't. I just think that they ran out of gas and they couldn't close it out. I mean, they were playing pretty well, and they were playing pretty well, and to not even score 20 points in the fourth quarter was a little upsetting to finish that game based on the way it had previously gone.
Tough.
Do we even need to tell the viewers who we're talking about?
You know what? It's obviously the Knicks, but take that game in a nutshell. They've obviously had a good season at this point, the Knicks. Brunson has come as advertised, even better. That's one of those games. For whatever reason, the Knicks, oddly enough, they've struggled at home. They've blown a lot of big leads at home. So I'm hoping this is one of these, kind of new, youngish teams figuring it out on the fly. But they have had an alarming trend lately of blowing home leads, big ones. They almost did it again last night. They hung on. So Philly's good. I mean, I don't think the Knicks are better than Philly. I don't think any one of us would say that. Disappointing that day, sure. But I think that output, they scored 60 in the fourth. I think that's the anomaly. They've been much better than that. Offensively, period, down the stretch. I'm kind of just going to chalk that one up to too much turkey, too much eggnog the night before. It wasn't a good performance. Knicks have played well overall, and Philly's been a decent squad. So, poor performance that night. I don't want to judge the whole season off a terrible fourth quarter, which again is an alarming trend that they need to ship up, because they've continually blown these big leads at home. You want home to be your big advantage, and they've quite frankly played better on the road. So that is, for a young team, something they need to shore up.
There's a there's people on Twitter like begging Spike Lee not to come to the games because they said it's his fault.
Could you imagine if there was Twitter when Reggie Miller was playing? Oh my gosh! I mean, he would have had to have armed security. Spike Lee would have, and I would have been one of them.
Spike Lee wasn't even at the game. I was watching the simulcast. He was having like an interview with Stephen A. Smith during this game.
Oh, okay.
So you can't even jinx. You can't even say it was him. It was Spike Lee jinx.
He abandoned them.
No, they were the New York Bricks in that fourth quarter. It happens.
Do we think the season outlook for them is a legitimate top 6 finish, and anything after that is crazy?
I do. I personally do. I was really high. I was really high in the Brunson move. I just thought they needed a legit captain, at the point guard position, which he's been excellent. So no, we don't think they're winning the title. But I remember we looked at the over-unders. Their number was somewhere around 38, I think. I thought this was going to be an over 500 team. And then the other part to that too is Randall, who he would self-admittedly say did not have a good year last year. He's not supposed to have the ball in his hands that's never been his game. Going back to Kentucky, never been. So he's just in a better role now as well. Where he doesn't have to play with the ball. He can, he can, when Brunson facilitates, he can get more open shots. He doesn't have to do everything. So I just think that the whole team it's a better fit across the board.
I like Brunson. No, I'm not mad at the move.
He's been great. You can make an argument he's underpaid. Not underpaid. There's no such thing. But the amount of his contract was heavily criticized. I mean, he's made every % of it. He's just gotten better lately.
Yeah. We just need RJ to get it together.
But they, I mean, even him, they're over 500. He's been better lately. He hadn't shot the ball well at all the first half of the season. So I mean, to be what are they? I believe 4 games over 500 or somewhere around that right now. That's I think it's a good first half. I don't necessarily see that changing.
Welp gang, thanks for kicking it with us here at the Hoops Boys Pod. I want to shout out our guest experts, Shad and Greg. Thanks for your expertise. Much love as always. And until next time, hit us up on socials, Hoops Boys Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and chop it up with us. Peace and love. Hoops Boys Pod.
Goalie.